Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 156, your podcasting success in 2013 and goals for 2014, recorded live from New Media Expo. Thank you for joining me for the Audacity to Podcast. Thank you, live viewers, for joining me. This is recorded live at New Media Expo 2014. And Happy New Year. I hope you had a great New Year. This is the award-winning how-to podcast about podcasting and using Audacity. It's where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you so much for joining me. This episode is going to have a lot of your feedback, and you may be listening to this after the fact, or you may be one of the people who are here, but this will include your stories, and it won't stop with the content that I share in this episode. But I'll also ask that you comment on the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/156 to let me know your podcasting success in 2013 and one goal in 2014. So I'm going to kick this off with some feedback that I received from George Jackson.
Hi, Daniel. This is George Jackson of the Sci-fi Super Friends podcast and also the Art of Grantsmanship podcast. Well, I started my podcast in 2013, movie review podcast where we talk about movies, science fiction movies, and fantasy and horror movies. And one of the things that my podcasts, including my other one, my professional one, The Art of Grantsmanship, one of the things that it's helped me to do is to build and add a whole new skill set for myself. I'm editing and recording and doing blog posts, and these are things that I never really did before, so I learned a whole new skill set: audio editing, social media, and it's been great, something I could add to my resume. And what I plan to do new to make my podcasts even better, I'm going to be having more guests or doing more interviews of people who I think are really interesting and great thought leaders in my industry to come on the show and make my show even more engaging. So that's what I plan, and that's what podcasting has done for me.
Thank you very much, George. I really appreciate that. And yeah, more guests in 2014, a great goal for your podcast. Get some more voices in there. And speaking of more voices, this is recorded live at New Media Expo. I've got a line of people who are eager to share with me their goals and their successes with their podcast. So we're going to get some great podcast promotion here. Definitely check out the show notes for the links for all of these shows that everyone has and as they share. So go ahead and step up to the microphone. And first up, we've got Vernon. Thank you so much for joining me, Vernon.
Hey, good to be here, man.
First of all, tell me about your podcast that you currently have.
Okay, so the podcast is the Social Strategy Podcast. It is a online business, social media, and networking podcast. So it's interview-based, and I do some solo shows where I teach entrepreneurs about social media, online business, and networking.
Awesome. So what is a success you had with your podcast or that your podcast gave you in 2013?
My biggest success right now is one of my favorite interviews was Andrew Warner.
Wow.
I had no idea I was going to be able to get Andrew Warner. I sent him an email by recommendation of Jamin Tardy from the Eventual Millionaire podcast and website. He said yes, we got him on, and that interview did a lot for my business just because he turned the interview around on me, and I examined some things that I just wasn't ready to examine on the air live, and it really changed the way that I looked at podcasting and what it was going to do for my business. It was awesome.
Awesome. So then what's a goal that you have for 2014?
The goal for 2014 is to create more digital products so that I can actually, educate people even more. So to complement the podcast, actually have some trainings and some stuff to really help people and get the message out there and, teach people more about podcasting because it's done so much for my business.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
All
and
right.
Tell us again, where can people then find your podcast and if your digital products will be on that site or if it's on a different site? Tell us.
It'll be on the socialstrategypodcast.com.
Okay.
And you can find me there. I'm on iTunes, on Stitcher, just about anywhere.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Vernon.
Daniel.
Really
appreciate it.
having you here. That's awesome. Great goals, great success, nailing those interviews, those dream interviews. It's so wonderful to hear those thoughts. Next up, thank you so much, Shawn Smith, for joining me.
Hey, Daniel, it's such an honor to meet you in person. We're all gathered out here. We're like, we're meeting the rock star. Here he is, man.
Oh, come on. Coming to these conferences make me feel like a rock star. Otherwise, I mean,
you are
really,
a rock star.
Well, the reason I say that, not like boasting, but it's just like outside of this, I feel like just one of you, and we're all podcasting together. And then here, I love hearing the stories of people saying, I'm podcasting now.
Yes.
And how awesome that is. So what is your success from 2013?
Yeah, well, in 2013, for the past 3 years, I've been putting together podcasts for our mission trips. I do mission work in Guatemala. NowistheTimemission.com is our mission site. But it's just been for family and friends of those missionaries who have come with us. So we've done a nightly podcast. And I've had to figure out how to do podcasting out of the country, how to do podcasting out of a backpack. And someone said, Shawn, you should really tell people about that. So within the next couple months, I'm going to be... Actually, I just launched my site yesterday, Daniel, and you were a big inspiration, encouraging me. I've been listening to your podcasts for about 6 months now on how to do all this stuff professionally. So I just launched themobilepro.net or at themobilepro_. And within the next month, I hope to launch the Mobile Pro podcast, talking about how to do podcasting on the road, how to be an entrepreneur, podcasting, video, webcasts, etc. on the road. So in 2014, I think that was your next question, right? I hope to launch my professional podcast, teaching others how to do all of this, all of what you do here on the road.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome to the podcasting space then. So here's one question I'm sure many people will want to know right away as a tease for your content that you'll be sharing at themobilepropodcast.com?
The Mobile Pro Net.
The Mobile Pro Net. Okay.
The mobilepro.net.
Yeah. So what then is a piece of equipment that makes it possible for you to podcast like you do?
So we're looking at this mixer right here, this giant mixer, and you have an iPad, we have several mics. The mixer is the big downside to mobile podcasting.
Yeah.
So there is a interface, a USB interface called an ART USB Pre that will connect to the Apple Connection Kit directly into your iPhone, and you can do discrete two-channel recording. So you can be on one channel, I can be on another channel through the ART USB dual pre. No external power, no batteries. Gets its battery powered from the iPhone.
Wow.
So I've got 4 setups of how you can do multiple mic mobile podcasting on your iPhone. If you go to themobilepro.net/NMX, this conference, you will see the 4 different setups that I've put together that I've been using for the past couple of years. And iOS 7 on the iPhone now makes it possible for you to do 2-track recording.
Yeah.
So if you need to mix something, take all this noise out, post-production, you can do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shawn Smith. And tell us once more where people can find your site.
Themobilepro.net or at themobilepro_. And Daniel, I just want to thank you again. You are a rock star.
Thank you. You are too. And welcome to podcasting.
Thanks. Great to meet you.
You too. That is awesome. Not even started a podcast yet, but already having great success or working with podcasting. And he's launching his new podcast. Yeah, he has been podcasting, correction there, and finding new success with it. Next up, Matt Johnson. Thank you for joining me for the Audacity podcast.
It's great to be here, Daniel. Appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, so tell us about your podcast thing.
Sure, I have 2 podcasts now. My first one is called Runner Academy, and we interview elite runners, coaches, other athletes, authors, and some of the top researchers in exercise science, and we boil it down into actionable insights for people training for their first 5K or marathons or ultra marathons, and really provide them a source of inspiration, education, and as we like to say, tell people to get out and crush it.
Awesome. Yeah. So then what's a success that you found? How have you crushed it in 2013?
We crushed it by really growing the show. I launched it in August of 2012, and through 2013, the amount of the quality of the guests and the audience really grew to the point where I was nominated for a podcast award, as I know you are as well, so good luck to both of us this evening. And but really the most rewarding part of the whole thing is going out to different race expos and meeting other runners and having people come up to you and they hug you and they thank you for the information that you've given them, and really, having an impact on people's lives. I mean, that's immeasurable. We sit in our studios and we record and we talk to these great guests, but when you get out there and people who are listening to the podcast and are actually making use of what you're putting out there, you don't understand the impact you get out there and meet your listeners, and it's just so rewarding to experience that.
Yeah, especially like the listeners that you've interacted with through Twitter or Facebook or comments or email, then meeting them, shaking their hand, like you.
We get those. We get those all the time. I interact with listeners on Facebook, Twitter, and I get emails, and people leave voicemails, and we answer their questions on the show, and just that interaction just really. It's really great to get the feedback of how much it helps people, and podcasting is such a great medium for communicating to any audience, any niche, but specifically with what I do with running. People are out running and they're exercising. Yeah. It's an absolute perfect fit, and I get people that write in saying, I was out doing my marathon or I was struggling with my training and I was listening to the show, and it really helped push me, through and finish my workout. So that's very rewarding.
Awesome. So what's a goal then for 2014?
Goal for 2014 is I just launched a second podcast called the Everyday Runners Podcast, where I'm actually just interviewing everyday people. So these people that have great stories, or they've lost a lot of weight, or they've gone out and ran their first marathon, or they've raised a lot of money, just really anything goes. And I'd like to see that one grow to the success that Runner Academy's had and impact tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to achieve their own running goals, and, as we say, get out and crush it.
Awesome. Yeah, and you are doing that. So thank you so much, Matt Johnson.
Yes.
Tell us again where people can find your podcast.
You can find my podcast over at runneracademy.com. We've got a link to both of the shows there, and, of course, it's in iTunes and every podcatcher, and I have podcast apps as well on all the platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah, get out there and crush it. I love that there's so much passion here, as you can tell. This conference, I feel like we're going to explode from passion and happiness that comes from this. And speaking of happiness, that's a good segue into a man that is now a happiness engineer, Dustin Hartzler. Dustin, welcome to the Audacity podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Daniel.
Tell us about your podcast.
So I have a podcast about WordPress. It's called Your Website Engineer Podcast, and you can find it at yourwebsiteengineer.com. But I basically, 3 years ago, started a podcast about teaching people how to use their WordPress websites and how to use it properly for their business and things that they need to think about to run a website online.
Awesome. So I think I know what you're going to say, but because it's written on your shirt. But tell me, what is a podcasting success you had in 2013?
So in 2013, I applied for a dream job of mine to work at the company behind WordPress, Automatic. And 6 weeks ago, actually, I started at Automatic full-time. So I am a full-time happiness engineer. So that is like the biggest goal ever. It was a dream job that I didn't know that existed out there. And when I found out about it, just my passion, my energy behind the podcast really helped set me apart from the hundreds of applicants I get every day.
Awesome. Yeah, and you're doing great work over there. It's really cool to see you. You've been talking about WordPress for so long, and now you're actually working inside of it.
It is awesome. It's like a dream come true. I told people when I got the job, it was like I work at Disney World. Like, it's like just that little kid feeling that it's like, this is the best thing in the world, and I get to go to work there every single day. So my passion is just helping people with WordPress, and that's like in my job description.
And
awesome.
So before that, you were self-employed, right?
Exactly.
Okay. I've heard this story from several people where like their podcast helped them get self-employed, and then their podcast helped them get a job that is a dream job.
Exactly.
For them.
Yeah. It was the podcast for me. When I got it started, I was like, I want to do something to give back to the WordPress community. I'm not the best coder in the world. I'm not the best designer, but I wanted to do something. So what I came up with, I'm like, I'm going to do a podcast, and that led to so many leads. Like somebody would be like, oh, you just talked about this on the show, but I don't know how to do it. I want to hire you. Like this is the best case scenario. And then I found out about this happiness engineer job, and I'm like, that's even better suited for me. So I really love just teaching and helping people and just explaining things in great detail, and that's what I get to do every day to the WordPress.com users.
So you've shared with your audience that your podcast will continue going. Mm-hmm. So what is a goal that you have for 2014?
Yeah, 2014 is all about growing the audience and making it the best free resource out there for WordPress. With my conflict of interest, my agreement with WordPress is I can no longer sell any WordPress stuff. I can give as much away for free as I'd like, but I can't sell anything. So my goal is just to create the best resource that's out there available on the web for people to learn about WordPress, to understand. And so kind of my big goal, my thing that I've been thinking about a lot this past year is, or to the start of 2014, is just be awesome and continue to grow. And I also want to add some more personal flair to my to my podcast, so people get to know the Dustin behind the mic. I don't share a lot of personal details, but I think that's somewhere where I need to go in 2014 as well.
Awesome. Yeah, great goals. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Tell us one more time where people can get your podcast.
You can find it at yourwebsiteengineer.com.
Awesome. I am not only a friend, but also a listener.
Exactly. Awesome. And living half an hour away.
Yeah.
But we have to go to conferences to meet each other. We've never seen each other in Ohio.
Yeah.
It's always been somewhere else.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
what happens in social media.
Exactly.
But thank you so much for joining me, Dustin. Yeah, some awesome stories of getting a dream job from his podcast. And that is so encouraging. And I know many of you out there have also had similar success. And so please definitely comment on the show notes. Share your success and your goals for the upcoming year. Next up, I've got Ryan Gray with me here. Ryan, thank you for joining me on this show.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
And tell us about your podcast.
So my podcast is a little different than most of the shows that you've had on already. I have a podcast dedicated to pre-medical students to help them get into medical school.
That's
very different.
Niche.
Yes, very niche. So I'm a physician. I know the struggles that pre-med students go through, the heartache, the constant pounding of their head on the table, and I'm trying to show them that it's not as hard as they think it is.
So where can people find that again?
I'm at medicalschoolhq.net.
Okay. So what is a success that you found with your podcast then in 2013?
So in 2013 was our first full year. We launched at the very end of 2012, and 2013 has brought a ton of success, mostly the exposure that I've gotten. I've been asked to talk at a lot of pre-med conferences now, and so I think it's just growing the audience and getting that recognition as being an expert is awesome.
Awesome. Is there a big audience there?
There hopefully will be a bigger audience for me, but yes, there is. It's about 100,000 pre-med students a year.
Wow.
So not gigantic compared to a lot of other niches, but it's big enough.
So a pre-med student would be around their 20s, right?
Yeah, anybody, and it even goes back into high school. I get a high school student that comments a ton on the blog that says, I love listening to you, and I do it with my wife. And so he left a thing that says, my mom likes it when you let your wife on the show. So, but yeah, high school all the way through college, and then there is actually a ton of career changers. With the economy now, a lot of people are second-guessing what they chose to do originally, and they're thinking about going back into medicine, something they thought about when they were younger. So it's interesting.
That's awesome. So then what is a goal you have for 2014?
So 2014, continue to grow the podcast. We are hopefully going to have a ton of new partnerships coming up with some big pre-med magazines, and just continue to show people that there's more than one way to get into medical school, and you don't have to kill yourself doing it.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. And tell us again, where can people find your show?
So we're medicalschoolhq.net.
Okay, cool. And also your information there about speaking at conferences in case that rings.
We'll have all that on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. That is cool. The opportunities that open up from podcasting are amazing. And that's what is so cool to hear from everyone here. And I am going to let this next person pronounce their own last name, but Michael, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. My name is Michael Ivaliotis, and the podcast I initiated in 2013 was the Walking Dead Girl podcast, which is available at thewalkingdeadgirl.com.
Great name, by the way.
And the reason why it's called that is because I'm doing it with my daughter, who's 16 years old. She's still in high school, and one of the things that I know you're going to ask this question because I've heard it from others that are waiting in front of me, but one of the successes of 2013 was to actually start this podcast, but also to build a better relationship with my daughter.
Awesome.
And the podcast has definitely changed our relationship for the better. And it's more fun. We're doing a lot of cool stuff together. we actually went to a convention for The Walking Dead called Walker Stalker Con, where we actually met a lot of the stars of the show. So the podcast led us into a whole new world that we didn't know existed for us. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really neat. I hadn't heard of people talking about how their podcast helped them build a stronger relationship with someone else. I mean, with like the podcaster to an audience or to a community out there, but like co-host to co-host. That's awesome that it's building your family relationship.
Yeah, and actually, I'd like to just put it out there to everyone else who's listening. If you have children in your family or relatives that have kids, encourage them to do podcasts or come on podcasts and, talk about something that they're passionate about and get the younger generation involved. I think it's a great idea.
Awesome. So then what's your goal for 2014? Or one of them?
Yeah, there's a lot of goals, but one of the main goals for the podcast itself is to bring more guests on the show, on our podcast from the Walking Dead TV show, and interview them. My daughter's a big fan of Andrew Lincoln, her favorite actor, so her goal is to get him an interview on our show. And that's kind of our pie-in-the-sky goal, but hopefully we'll achieve it in 2014.
It will be a lot of fun for you, and I'm sure you guys will do well. There will be some fangirling, I'm sure, but I know that you'll do a great job at it. And so that's at Walking Girl. What's the website again?
It's thewalkingdeadgirl.com.
Okay.
And before I get off the mic, I'd like to thank you, Daniel, for doing your podcast. It's been a great learning experience for me, learning great tips and tricks and how to improve my site, my podcast, and I really appreciate all the work you do.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, Michael. I appreciate it. That's awesome. And the people here at New Media Expo are so exciting. They're exciting to meet. They're exciting to talk to. What they're doing is exciting. And I got to spend some time with Michael this morning as we had a little meetup with TV and film podcasters here at New Media Expo, and some really cool stuff and cool people doing awesome things. So next up, I have here Paul Shakuri. Thank you so much for joining me, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about your podcast.
My podcast is called Entrepreneur Adrenaline, and as you can tell kind of from my voice, and you'll get to hear, I'm full of adrenaline, and I'm here to bring it. So, my podcast, basically, I've been in the whole offline world for the last 9 years, and I've really learned how to master the art of door-to-door sales, and sales in general, and I've always been teaching it. Here strictly for the last 6 years, I've been one-on-one doing a lot of coaching with sales students, and I thought from the back of my mind, I want to reach out to a bigger audience because now I'm based out of Arizona, originally from Canada, for you Canadian folks out there. But I wanted to reach out to a larger audience. And obviously information is something that I always gather a bunch of and then I take action. So I started listening to podcasts. I went on my iPhone, started listening to podcasts, and I actually ran into a couple of other podcasts. And I obviously watched Shark Tank, the show, being if you have an entrepreneur show, I'm pretty sure you listened or watched the Shark Tank. So I went in and I saw a lot of these other people on there were actually having these people from the Shark Tank on the show, such as Barbara and all that. So, I always wanted to broadcast my message. I always wanted to get my word out there. And all in all, I said, hey, I'm going to start a podcast and it's going to be extremely successful and I'm going to make it work no matter what it takes because I'm a competitive person by nature. So, yeah, so hence it was actually born, the Entrepreneur Adrenaline Show.
Awesome. So when did you start your show?
6 months ago.
Okay, so what would you say, maybe starting it was your success, but what would you say was your success in 2013?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. Now, for the other entrepreneurs out there who are listening to this show, the number one success, like you said, is getting going and starting it. I used to be a perfectionist. I always wanted to perfect everything before I actually get things started. And this is exactly what I teach all the time. Don't do that. You have to get something up and running, but again, I wanted to get it in the best quality of nature that I can get it out in. So I reached out to the top people in the industry, like Cliff Ravenscraft and all, and so I got the best equipment, got it out there, and not necessarily just got it out there. I had an agenda. I had to get episodes out there, bring in my heat, bring in the quality information, and I did that. And as such, normally when I take a look at starting something new, it normally takes a long time to get out there and to get that spark. But I have to say, I'm very excited for where I'm at in this very short period of time. How many people are engaging with me and how many people are actually out there just absorbing my information and saying, hey, I really like what you have to offer. Bring more. So that's my success story for 2013. I personally believe I really hit my goals that I wanted to accomplish.
Awesome. So then what are your new goals for 2014?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Being at the NMX, it's really taught me a lot so far. My 2014 goals, and I've actually structured my business to set up to start right before 2014, because everybody always says it's a new year, you got to start on January 1st. Well, my first day of January 1st started at the end of December 2013. So my big goals here in 2014 is to get more reputable, to network with more people, to know exactly who I am and what I represent. Get that word out about the Entrepreneur Adrenaline Show, because coming to these sessions, coming to the NMX Expo, to me it's like I see all the top people in the industry. I want to be up there, and I'm competitive by nature, and no matter what it takes, obviously as long as it's legal, I always say on my show, I'm gonna get there. So networking with others, really reaching out, really getting, and I've learned a lot from Pat Flynn as I had him on my show, but really reaching out to people and showing who you are, but more importantly, letting them know you're human. I'm here to actually help you out with, if I can help you out with the things that I teach and I've learned to master, well, I'm that go-to guy, and I'm going to really get personal with you. So in 2014, look out, people. I'm actually getting more personal than ever. Send me an email, send me a message. You will hear back from me. And I want to be known as the quickest in the industry for the biggest audience. So, yeah, that's me.
Sounds like the fire is going to get a lot hotter in the entrepreneurial space.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I've been listening to your show, too. So thank you very much for the quality information you bring.
So, Paul, tell us again, where can people find you?
You can head over to entadr.com. That's entadr.com. And that forwards you to Entrepreneur Adrenaline, because a lot of people, just like myself when I got started, how exactly do you spell that? Now I know, because I go to the domain all the time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me,
Thank
Paul.
you very much.
Now, our next guest actually emailed me feedback. This is Fred Castaneda coming up, and he had emailed me his feedback, and I knew he was going to be coming to New Media Expo, so I said, Fred, just come to the actual recording session and give me your voice so I don't have to read your feedback. So Fred Castaneda, thank you so much for joining me on the Audacity podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It's been, several years now. Since 2010, we've been in communication, and it's good to be here, especially on the Audacity podcast again.
Yeah, I think, yes, the 2 episodes we recorded, a 2-part interview.
I recorded an interview with you on Struggling Entrepreneur, and then you recorded a double episode, right? You broke it down into 2 episodes when you interviewed me for the Audacity podcast, and I thank you very much for that. That was 2010, September.
Yeah.
Or September.
When I got married.
Right.
You were just
about to get married.
Yes.
Right. And then you also had a day job at that time, and then 6 months later, here you are, a newlywed as well as a full-time podcaster.
Yeah, I remember in our podcast, you asked me a question about
your employment.
What did I plan to do with my employment? And I kind of stumbled over that answer, and eventually I had to ask you, can you just remove that? Because I wasn't ready yet to share my plans, and I felt like I leaked a little bit too much. But now, I'm on the other side of this.
Right.
Things have gone according to plan.
Right, and now you're an award-winning podcaster.
That wasn't quite planned, but thank you.
Anyway, as you know, in 2013, I still had my flagship Struggling Entrepreneur, and by the way, I had 6 podcasts going, as you know. Struggling Entrepreneur was the prime one. I also had 2 courses that I had podcasts in. Gain Control of Your Day, which is a personal productivity podcast, tells you how to do more in less time with better quality, reduce stress, and Finance for Startups, which tells you everything you need to know if you're going to create a startup. Well, in 2013, I said I'm going to give back to the community. I'd already made my money from both of those podcasts, which were premium seminars, over 40 episodes. I mean, it was almost a year long just to get them all. So I gave them back. Starting in February of 2013, I gave 1 episode each week. And in December 27th, I finally ended up giving both Gain Control of Your Day and Finance for Startups to the community for free. So it was there. It's available. Of course, they had to go get it or subscribe to iTunes on Finance for Startups to get it. Now, if they wanted it all at once, then they could order a DVD, $10, $20, just the recovery costs and paying for the royalties, because I didn't teach the course of Finance for Startups. I had a joint venture, so I have to give him royalties. And they could get everything on a single DVD. So I did that for 2013. I'd let you know that that's what I planned in January. Remember when you were asking people what he planned to do?
I remember.
And I completed it saying, done, both. complete. So I did that in 2013 for my audience on Struggling Entrepreneur.
Awesome. So then what is a goal you have for 2014?
I'm showing them a business card that says, I just launched another podcast, right? Remember I told you I wouldn't do any more, right?
Yeah.
The seventh podcast is Boomers for Startups at boomersforstartups.com. Why am I doing this? Well, on December 19th, I interviewed a guy whose name is Norm Bauer. It took him 30 years to be a successful entrepreneur. And he was a baby boomer. He is so enthusiastic about being a motivational speaker, as well as having not only the energy and everything for the baby boomers, but also helping them. And so I said, good. So I started Boomers for Startups. I also have another one called Boomers for Success. We'll see how that goes. That's really I got for him. But all of a sudden I thought to myself, and I'm a baby boomer, right? I'm 65 years old, Vietnam veteran. And this doesn't take away from the other podcasts that I have, like the CIB, Austin.org, which is Combat Infantrymen's Badge Association. For you guys can't see me, but I'm wearing my hat that says Combat Infantryman because talk about a niche audience. You can't get much more niche than that, right? Anybody who's been under fire in combat and lived to tell about it, we have that available from World War II all the way to the present. So I'm here representing that more than anything else, but I'm also launching Boomers for Startups to give the baby boomers everything they need to know to launch a good startup and create their own entrepreneurship. And guess what we're giving away to them as well?
Which one?
Finance for Startups and Gain Control of Your Day. So they have those as tools because most of the time they're not going to have the money to do it. And there's three types of baby boomers. You have the entrepreneurs, which says, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I think it'd be cool to have an entrepreneurship, small business, be my own boss. They don't know what it's like when you finally get in and all the hard work. The second one are the entrepreneurs. Those are the ones who have a passion. They have the skill. They want to actually move that skill and create their own podcast or their own small business, but they don't know how. They don't know where to start. They just finished retiring. And the third one, unfortunately, are what we call the necessity-preneurs. These are the baby boomers that got laid off. There's no hope for them getting a job because of age discrimination, and so they say, I can't get a job. It's been 2-3 years since I've had one. My savings are almost all dried up, and so what am I going to do? Darn it, I guess I have to start my own business and become an entrepreneur. They're the necessity-preneurs. So we cater to all three of those audiences. And as you know, that's my pledge for 2014 is to give back to that community in this way. And, of course, all my podcasts are free.
And I'm going to be connecting my dad with some of your content because my dad flew in Vietnam, B-52 bomber pilot.
Who saved my life probably many times.
Yes, and clearly he didn't drop a bomb on you accidentally, so he had a pretty good aim.
He had the bad guys when we were in the bush and the rice paddies in the jungles, yeah.
And my dad is retiring in just a couple months from this time when I'm recording this. So he's already thinking about what is he going to do after retirement. He's choosing to retire because he wants to pursue something that's more relaxed. He wants to basically be an entrepreneur. So I'll be definitely connecting him with your content.
Well, remember, there's three things that these entrepreneurs can go into. Not only podcasting, but they can do video casting, and they can also do screencasting. There's a new course called Careers in Screencasting. It's by the Learn Camtasia guys.
Oh, yeah.
They may want to look at that. It's like $47 with a $20. I think they're going to be $20 discount, so it's only $27. But it shows you the business of how to become a screencaster, if that's what you want to do for education and training. The other thing for your dad is Air Force is great. They're wonderful guys. Why do I say that? Because, as you know, I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. Yeah. And we needed them for half-hour jumps, right?
At this time, you're not seeing this, but at this time, I'm getting a whole collection of cards from Fred because he is the podcast card master.
Well, because each audience is different, and one card cannot suffice for everybody. So I have my business cards for the 82nd Airborne Division podcast I do, for the CIB, the Combat Infantrymen's podcast I do, for the Struggling Entrepreneur podcast, the Boomers for Startups, and I also have Finance for Startups, Gain Control of Your Day. And the very first one that I cut my teeth on podcasting, I was a dancer, a professional dancer, danced at Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm. It was called Folklórico Music and Dance of Mexico, right?
Wow.
And I showed this to you last year, but you remember that I used to teach Mexican folklórico dance.
Yes.
With a charro traje.
A nice sombrero for you.
So, yeah, I've got 7 podcasts right now, and in 2014, I'm going to be, again, giving back to the community.
Awesome. So then, with your 7 podcasts, is there one place people can go to basically find the rest of your podcasts?
StrugglingEntrepreneur.com is probably the flagship there. You can go and find out everything. I'll be referencing that to everybody else. Awesome. But, you know, the others, boomersforstartups.com, cibaustin.org, 82ndabndivalamo.org, as well as financeforstartups.com and gaincontrolofyourday.com.
Awesome. Fred Castaneda, thank you so much for joining me.
Good to see you again, Daniel. Good luck. And are you going to be an award-winning podcaster this year?
We'll find out. The awards ceremony is actually tonight when I'm recording this. I wish it was the day before I was recording so I could say what the results were, but we'll see. We've got 5 podcasts up for 6 different awards.
Remember last year I said you're going to win it, right?
We'll see. I'm actually hoping for Eric Fisher to win it.
Thank you very much, and to your listeners. The Audacity podcast. I've been listening to your show since the very beginning.
Thank you. That is awesome content. Yeah, and Fred does not stop, as you can hear. And podcasters, I don't think many podcasters stop. When they stop one podcast, it's not stopping podcasting. It's, as we've discovered, it means putting aside one to start another. And another man who has started many podcasts and actually works in Noodle Mix Network with me, Wayne Henderson. Thank you so much for joining me.
Daniel, this is awesome to be with you on the floor of the New Media Expo.
Cool. So tell us about your podcast or podcasts that you currently host.
Currently hosting the Under the Dome radio podcast with Noodle Mix Network, as well as doing TV Talk's Revenge podcast.
Awesome. And so what is a success that your podcast helped you achieve, or what's a podcasting success you had in 2013?
In 2013, it was the launching of Under the Dome Radio, which we made it in new and noteworthy into iTunes. We had a strategic plan. It really worked. Made it all the way up to number 7 in the television and film podcast for a little while. And it was just amazing. We were floored by the response. Got to interview some of the B-level actors that were on the show, some of the co-stars, and we just had a blast, and we're looking forward to next summer when Under the Dome returns to go even further.
What is that date for the return?
It's mid-June. I don't think they've set an exact date just yet.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll be looking at that at underthedomeradio.com.
That is it, underthedomeradio.com.
So then what is a goal for 2014?
For 2014, it would be to continue the success with Under the Dome Radio, to see how far we can go with that and tie it into the second season of Under the Dome, as well as my Packers fan podcast. My goal for that, once we turn around in the fall for the 2014 Packers season, we would love to secure some interviews for that podcast as well with some players from the Green Bay Packers. We'll have to wait and see.
Have you had any interviews with any of the players, like current or previous players before?
No. The Green Bay Packers and probably all NFL football teams are pretty tight. We've been in touch with them, and if anybody could score an interview and write a persuasive letter, it'd be my Under the Dome Radio podcast, Troy. But the only response we really get is, look, you're an internet-only entity. We're very sorry. So they need to get with the modern age. They really do.
Well, maybe they will start to take podcasting seriously, as 2013 has been labeled many times here at New Media Expo as the year of podcasting. So maybe the sports companies will start to catch on and see that.
That's right. About the same time that you become a big fan of the Green Bay Packers as well, Daniel.
First, I have to become a fan of sports.
Well, one thing at a time. I understand.
So tell us again, where can people find your content?
People can find my main content at mediavoiceovers.com if they're interested in having me provide some voiceovers for them, as well as the Packers Fan Podcast is linked to from there. But, of course, you can go to underthedomeradio.com or Noodle Mix, noodle.mx, and find the show there as well, because it's great to be part of the network.
Yeah, it's great to have you part of the network, Wayne and Troy, who couldn't be here for New Media Expo. But great to have you both part of it, and I'm looking forward to a good second season with you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, Daniel. This is fun. New Media Expo is amazing.
It is. Thank you. There have been some great inspirations here, and it keeps on coming. I don't know how long this episode will be, but definitely go to the show notes. Check out at theaudacitypodcast.com/156 so you can connect with all of these people. Check out their podcasts, because maybe one of these podcasts you've heard have stood out to you as something that you want to grab onto. And you can be inspired by this content too. So comment on the show notes and let me know how you were inspired or what some of your successes and goals are. So joining me next is Daryl Darnell. Thank you, Daryl, so much for joining me.
Thanks, Daniel, for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So tell us about whatever podcast you're doing now, because you've done a bunch.
Yeah, I've got a
and
few.
had some great success. So tell us about what's big right now.
Sure. I do Golden Spiral Media. That's my podcasting company. And right now I'm doing Almost Human podcast about the Fox show Almost Human, and the Revolution podcast about the NBC show Revolution. And my wife and I do a Lost podcast.
Wait. Lost is over, right?
Yes.
Or is it one of those things that keeps on going?
Well, no. Actually, ours has a very specific time frame. 2014, September 22nd, will be the 10-year anniversary of the Lost pilot. It seems unbelievable that it's already been 10 years. And they're having an event in Hawaii during the for the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
So we are doing 2 episodes a week. We watch 2 episodes a week and then podcast about them leading up to that event in Hawaii. And so the name of our podcast is We Have to Go Back Podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great name.
And so that's our Lost podcast. And then I have another movie podcast called Triple Cast, where we take 3 movies that have something in common. It could be a same actor in all of them, maybe directed by the same director, or maybe they were based on books by the same author, have something in common, and we talk about each of those 3 movies over the course of 3 episodes. So it kind of goes in 3 episode segments. That's called Triple Cast.
And you used to host the Fringe Cast, too.
The Fringe podcast, that's the one we cut our teeth on. We started it in 2008 and ran it for the entire duration of the show Fringe. Wrapped it up just about a year ago. It ended in mid-January last year. Fringe said goodbye, and so did we.
And it was an award winner, too.
That's right. We won the 2010 Podcast Award for the Best Entertainment Podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then what is a podcasting success from 2013?
Can I give 2? You asked me this earlier, and I want to know if I can give one, a personal one and a Golden Spiral Media one.
Sure. I'll let you have 2.
I'll keep them short. Because for Golden Spiral Media, when Fringe wrapped last January, we wanted to have an event to bring, because that's what, like I said, we cut our teeth on that. We had such a great community around that podcast. And so I live in Oklahoma City. It's not really the mecca of anything, but about 50 people came to Oklahoma City last January, watched the finale with us. We had a 2-day event, and it was an amazing experience. So that's probably, for Golden Spiral Media, my favorite thing that we did in 2013. Personally, and this is something I shared with you at breakfast this morning, and I'll keep this story much more brief, but there was a listener to our podcast named Emily O'Leary, and I loved her feedback that she came in with every week. And I worked with her this year to mentor her and to help develop her into a podcaster. She was not at all a podcaster before, but I felt like she had a good voice and a good opinion that needed to be heard. And so after working with her on a few projects, she is now doing stuff apart from Golden Spiral Media and is a legit podcaster, and that's something that I'm proud to have been able to help her, be a part of that.
And what podcast then is she hosting?
She's doing some stuff with TV Talk, and she and I did Falling Skies over the summer, and she's currently doing Revolution for TV Talk.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and you work with TV Talk?
I work very much with TV Talk. I'm the lead producer for TV Talk, and so I do everything from host acquisition to helping decide which shows we're going to do, making sure everyone has the proper equipment and training, editing and producing podcasts, doing artwork, getting intro music. I mean, it's a lot that I do with TV Talk, and then I host TV Talk Person of Interest as well.
Nice. And I work for TV Talk, too. I host the Once Upon a Time in Wonderland podcast. Right. And TV Talk is really cool. It's a great network of shows about TV shows. And if you haven't checked it out yet, go to... Which address should we tell them to go to?
Well, tvtalk.com will get you there, and you can download all the apps from that link.
Yeah, apps for iOS and Android,
right.
And some great opportunities there to listen to some great content, short-form content, but really quality content, too.
Yeah, and a great breadth of shows. I think there are over 70 shows that we have produced for TV Talk from the beginning of last spring all the way through the summer and now into the fall and getting into the mid-season time of year.
So then what's a goal you have for 2014?
For me, in 2013, I left my career of 19 years to go into new media full-time, not only producing content for Golden Spiral Media and podcasting, but also helping other people produce their podcasts. A lot of people in the podcasting world come from a point of view where, let's say they're a realtor, or I've got a client who works for a beer distribution they own a beer distribution facility. Hey, that's the world that they live in. Audio production is not their world, and they don't want to learn that. And there are a lot of people out there. And so what I do is I extend my production services to other people. I'll let you create the content and do all of that, and then you send it over to me, and I will produce that sort of thing. So for me, my goals for 2014 are landing more clients and helping more people become podcasters, but not necessarily putting the burden on them to have to do all of the production work and that side of things. And from a Golden Spiral Media, like the podcasts that we do, because that's obviously still a big part of what we do, I'm actually stepping away from the microphone this year. For the first time, there will be podcasts that we produce as the Golden Spiral Media brand that will not have me hosting. I'm still hosting and will do all the things that I've been doing. I'm not moving away from anything there, but we'll be growing our selection of podcasts, and that will include stuff that doesn't mean I'm, yammering on for an hour.
Yeah, so it won't be like the Daryl Darnell Network anymore.
That's right.
It will be others involved.
That's right.
Too.
Exactly
Awesome.
right. Yeah.
Awesome. And so your podcast hosting or podcast service provision service, where can people find that?
GoldenSpiralMedia.com. And in our top navigation, you'll see a link for our production services. And there's a description of what we do, and then a contact form where you can contact me about getting together and talking about what their needs are.
I can see that kind of business really booming in 2014.
I
predicted that in just the last episode, that in that podcasting service providers really, I think, started booming in 2013. And I think they'll find great success in 2014. So I wish the best to you. And the podcast, too, can also be found from the same website?
The same website, GoldenSpiralMedia.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daryl, for joining me.
Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure.
This is exciting, and it is a pleasure to work with Daryl for TV Talk, and my wife and I host that podcast. Yes, we host two podcasts then about the same TV show. We do WonderlandPodcast.com, and then we host the Once Upon a Time in Wonderland podcast for TV Talk, and we have a lot of fun with that. It's a great group of people, too. Check it out, tvtalk.com. Joining me next, Corey Finneran. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for letting me jump on mic here on the floor. This is awesome, Daniel.
Yeah, so tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, the main podcast I do is on the Chicago Cubs. It's called IVNB.
Another sports podcast.
You're really into sports, right?
Cubs. Is that golf?
No, bowling. Yeah.
Okay.
No, baseball, of course. And so, I mean, even though you're not familiar with sports, I'm sure you know the Cubs have a tradition of losing.
Oh, really?
And so that's my elevator pitch. I podcast on 100 years of misery, because it's been 105 years since I won the World Series. So,
wow.
But that's the main podcast that I do, and then I was able to incorporate podcasting into my quote-unquote real job. I work in education. I work with students with disabilities, high school students, and so I have like an employment-based podcast teaching them work skills and pre-employment skills and things like that.
Oh, awesome. So what is the success that you've seen in 2013?
I would say the biggest thing for me really is tonight I'm like honored that I'm a finalist in the podcast awards in the sports category. Yeah, I'm like totally thrilled by that. We're up against ESPN, so I'm realistic with my expectations, and I mean just the fact that like we have a community that got behind us and really supported us and put us in the finals. I say it's not a testament to anything that we do necessarily. It's just the people that have gravitated towards us and what we've been able to build around us. So. Yeah.
Fantastic, and I hope you win an award.
Oh, thanks. I hope you do too.
What's hard though is to say that to you, and I also have another friend that's in
Nick,
the sports category.
Yes.
So I hope you both win awards, if that's possible.
I tell Nick if it's not me, I want it to be him.
Yeah.
And he's been here multiple times, so he's due. I'd be okay if he won.
Awesome. So then, what is a goal you have for 2014?
A goal that I have? Well, I recently started blogging, CoreyFinneran.com, on podcasting and social media, and eventually I would like to start a podcast this year on that, but I haven't started it yet because I just don't know really. I know that you need to niche down, and I haven't really figured out exactly what angle I want to take on it yet, but right now I'm just doing blog posts on topics that as podcasters and people that are using social media and stuff are encountering, so that's my main goal. Is I'd like to start a podcast on that, but I don't want to jump in and then have to decide I want to change gears too soon. I want to hit it at the right time and be real sure of myself going into it.
Awesome. So where can people find your content then? Where do you want them to go?
I would say, unless they're a Cubs fan, ivnb.com. But for the most part, if you go to CoreyFinneran.com, CoreyFinneran.com, you can kind of get to all my stuff from there.
Awesome. Well, Corey, I wish you the best of luck with your new ventures and the new content you'll be producing, too. I'll be checking it out as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Corey. Joining me next is Charles McFall. Thank you so much, Charles, for joining me on this show.
Thank you, Daniel, for allowing me to have some time on your show. It's awesome.
Tell us about your podcast.
I do a show called Once Upon a Podcast, where I talk about what you talked about last. No, yes, I just talk about what you talked about, so people can get it. I do Success Freaks. It's all about discovering, chasing, catching, and living the dream, helping others be awesome along the way. So it's about success, obviously, about doing what you want to do. And I heard a lot of your questions that we're actually going to be asking tomorrow when we do our show. Like, hey, like minds, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's comedic motivation, sum it up. It's funny. Laugh. Now. Thank you.
So what is a success that you've had in 2013?
Well, last year at NMX, we actually got to sit down with Leo Laporte and have him on the show.
Wow.
Which was awesome. And only because he's walking through the floor, because I don't even know how to email his publicist and get to the gatekeeper. And just over the year, we did our own conference, not like Expo, but we had 6 speakers in 7 hours and did our own motivational conference that we put on and gotten dozens and dozens and dozens of interviews and just getting the brand much bigger and better and more. And it's been awesome.
Great.
And I get to say I know the great Daniel J. Lewis. So.
Oh, thanks. So then what is the goal that you have for 2014?
Again, starting with NMX, we actually met with Penn Jillette yesterday after the keynote.
From Penn & Teller.
Yeah. And gave him a card, talked to his publicist and him at the same time. Hopefully he will be on our show tomorrow. We're hoping to hit Dr. Drew up tonight as well. And then this year I'm actually piecing together my living by doing the podcast and doing the show and doing public speaking. And really just want that's my goal this year, is to fully maintain my household based on what I've done with the new media.
Awesome. Great. So where can people find you and what you're doing with new media?
Well, everything is at charlesmcfall.com because I do Success Freaks, which is successfreaks.com. I also do a show with Brian Ibbett of Coverville called From the Helicarrier, which is about a game we play, Marvel Avengers Alliance.
Okay.
So you just go to charlesmcfall.com, you see all the different stuff is there.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me, Charles.
And congratulations on all your nominations tonight.
Thank you.
I hope you win.
Thank you
all of
very
them.
much. Yeah, we'll find out, and you'll probably hear me in the next episode. If you want to check out the awards ceremony, by the time this episode has come out, the awards ceremony has already aired, but you can rewatch it at podcastawards.com, and thank you so much for the voting, the nominations, the support, and if you are in the Podcast Awards and didn't win, it is still awesome that you made it there. I'm so happy to see that you made it in the Podcast Awards. Check out all of these podcasters that have come on here. I hope you've been inspired. I've been inspired. I think you can hear the enthusiasm in my fading voice from all of the loud talking I've been doing over this weekend. But there has been some great content here. I'm looking forward to checking out more of what all of these people are doing, and I hope you will too. Go to the show notes at theaudacitypodcast.com/156 and keep the conversation going. Let me know there in the show notes, what is a podcasting success you've had in 2013 and what is a podcasting goal that you have in 2014, and also let me know how this content has inspired you. That's at the show notes at theaudacitypodcast.com/156. And if you're interested in Podcast Masterclass, that is coming up very soon. I'm really excited about that. And that is, you can get that information over at podcastmasterclass.com. Use the promo code TAP Listener to save on your registration over there. It'll be an awesome course for podcasters to take their podcast and make it amazing. From average to amazing. That's over at podcastmasterclass.com. If you have more feedback for the Audacity to Podcast and stuff that you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please email feedback at theaudacitytopodcast.com. Leave a voicemail at 903-231-2221, or you can go to the website, theaudacitytopodcast.com, and send a voice message right there through the website on your computer or iOS device. And follow me on Twitter at @TheRamenNoodle. Now that not only I, but a bunch of other people have given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to go podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at